Guys, let's try again. On the fifth Sunday of Easter, the heart of the lectionary readings is John 14, verse 1 through 14. This reading is both inspirational and challenging. It invites us to reflect on the scope of salvation and trust that God has prepared a place for us and our loved ones that is more than we can ask or imagine. While we cannot truly fathom Jesus' words, we can trust his words when we are faced with realities we cannot control and must endure. Life's necessary losses can be accepted gracefully when we know that God is with us and that in the here and now and in any imaginable future, God has prepared a place for us. Like Stephen, we can catch a glimpse of everlasting life in times of threat and debilitation. Today's gospel reading could be described as 3 promises and a problem. Many congregational pastors regularly read John 14, verse 1 through 3 at funerals and memorial services. The implication of Jesus' words is that beyond the grave, God has prepared a place for our continuing spiritual adventures. And we don't know the nature of this place, but for a lack of a better word, we can speak of this place as heaven, the realm of the blessed, characterized by many mansions or dwelling places for our everlasting journey. We have a future and a hope and may enjoy diverse homes in the afterlife. God's realm is not uniform, but multifaceted and dynamic, and will be a place of positive relationships in our divine dwelling places. Of course, God's everlasting realm may be an entirely different place of existence, whose reality defies anything we can imagine. This dwelling place is wherever God is present, and that is everywhere and in every challenging situation. As Psalm 31 asserts, God is our fortress, and our times are in God's hand. John 14:10 speaks of the spiritual unity between God, the parent, and Jesus. The divine parent and Jesus are one in spirit. Jesus dwells fully in God's reality, reflecting and revealing God's vision, and God dwells in Jesus as his deepest self and animating spirit. The spiritual unity has metaphysical implications. Jesus and the parent are symbiotically related, experientially permeating one another. While this doesn't necessarily give us a description of the Trinity, it does suggest that Trinitarian thinking must focus on interdependence and spiritual unity as key characteristics. When we turn to Jesus, trusting his pathway to wholeness, we can experience God's energy flowing through us, and we can do great things. The final promise is that through Christ we can do even greater things than we can imagine. The nature of these things, these greater things, is left vague. Does Jesus mean we can heal the sick, raise the dead, and defy the ordinary limits placed on human life? Or that we will resonate with spiritual energy as a result of our nearness to God? The vagueness may be helpful because in not fully defining the nature of these greater things, we are given permission to push our limits individually and as communities. There is a deeper realism, a more lively naturalism, indeed, a theistic naturalism than we can imagine in our current state of consciousness and spiritual evolution. This is part of the regular casualty of the universe and is an intensification of our everyday lives in ways that seem supernatural. Resurrection is possible. Energetic cures are possible. Mysticism is possible for all whom open to God's movements in their lives. In John 15, Jesus speaks of vines and branches. When we are connected with the divine vine, we can do great things and bear much fruit. When we align ourselves with Jesus, we move from darkness into marvelous light and receive his powers and can manifest his energy of love in our lives. We can do greater things than we can imagine in concert with God's animating inspiration in our lives that are aligned with God's vision. Our prayers are answered. But our answers to prayers and our greater deeds are not generic or arbitrary. They reflect our deepest desires in concert with God's desires for our well-being and the well-being of the world. Now, the problem in today's reading emerges in John 14, verse 6. I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. When John 14 is used at funerals, often the minister stops at verse 3 to avoid theological confusion and the impact of the more popular interpretations of this passage. How often have people been brutalized by this passage? Historically, and especially in recent times, this passage has been used as both a carrot and a stick. It charts out a way to salvation and denigrates any other pathway to God, whether Christian or non-Christian. From this perspective, doubters, seekers, and faithful adherents of other faith traditions are ultimately doomed unless they explicitly accept Jesus as Savior, usually through reciting some formulaic sinner's prayer or creed. Anyone who stands outside these requirements is destined to damnation. As a college student once told me, my parents are good people, but because they aren't Christians, if they were to die tomorrow, they would go to hell, along with other good people like Buddha and the Dalai Lama. This passage becomes the antithesis to the greater things God imagines for it when we interpret it individualistically, exclusively, and literally. Imagination is stunted, and the gifts of the Spirit wither on the vine. Moreover, this passage can be theologically destructive if taken out of the context of John's Gospel and a holistic understanding of Jesus' life and message. Jesus' ministry was grounded in relationship rather than creed or theological litmus test. Follow the way of Jesus brings joy and salvation. Jesus' way, however, is not a demand, but a graceful invitation. Jesus barred no one from the path of salvation, although we have the ability to thwart Jesus' vision for our lives. Still, even those who turn from God are not abandoned. Those who crucified Jesus are given forgiveness. Despite our penchant for following pathways of darkness, God's light still envelopes and enlightens all of us. Jesus is the way to salvation in an inclusive way. All paths of salvation and enlightenment are grounded in the graceful energy of God. We walk the pathway to many mansions in many diverse ways, lured by God's moment-to-moment inspiration. We can still speak of Jesus as supreme without denigrating other faiths and casting doubt on people's eternal destinies. We can understand Jesus' pathways and embracing grace that animates and empowers all authentic paths. We can be confessional pluralists, recognizing that the diversity of spiritual paths is not a fall from grace, but a reflection of God's personal relationship with every culture and person. Christ is the way that includes all authentic ways, enabling all ways to be fruitful. When we interpret John 14:6 imaginatively and inclusively, then it becomes our fourth promise. God guides us on the pathway wherever we are on our journey. God's energy enlightens all persons in all cultures, makes a way where there is no way, and leads all creation in all of its diversity to wholeness. Anybody catch any of that?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Did you catch any of that?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, I was listening there. It spoke about how God's diversity is essentially, as hard as it may be, like the whole idea of if Buddha, if the Dalai Lama isn't a Christianity, they're going to hell, and this actually becomes one of the I guess the theses or whatever, the whole idea of people having any problems with it.
So what is it saying though about that?
It's saying that God is basically diverse, and that no matter what, I think personally in my belief that I think it's saying that if you're good and you're honest and you're true, then yes, you're going to go to heaven.
What did I just say what did I say about that? How did we come across with that? I mean, basically you're saying the same thing I said, but what did I say? I said that God is the paths, all paths lead to God.
Yes.
So by saying that Jesus Christ never ever discriminated against people and said, look, you can't come.
Yeah.
You know, you're not allowed to. He did say, through me, but you have to read it creatively, if you will. Like it says, you have to understand that God is an all-inclusive God, and I think it's ridiculous for us to possibly think that God would take people who are genuinely good people and damn them to hell based on the fact that they don't say the words, when in fact they followed the way of Christ to begin with. Just because they said they didn't say they did, just because they didn't say the words, they were leading Christ-like lives, right?
Exactly.
I think that's the important thing. This is what we talked about last week in our session after service. That's why it's so. I really wanted to get this across to everybody, because I don't think y'all got it last week. What we were trying to say. It's very important to understand. We don't take the Christianity is not discriminatory. Christianity does not judge. It's not our place to look at the Buddhists and the Jews and Islam and say, look, you're sinners. You don't believe in Jesus. Or you don't say Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior. Therefore, you're going to hell. First of all, that's not our place to say that, even though many Christians feel that it is. God is the only one to make that decision. But we are to accept these people and teach them, if they don't know, if they're not living it, how to walk with Christ, how to walk like Christ. And sometimes you don't even have to say the words, you just have to walk the walk, right? Okay.
Actions speak louder than words.
Absolutely, and that's part of our church's saying, isn't it? Non diligamus verbo nec lingua sed in opere et veritate, right? If you don't know what I said, go look at the church website, because it says it on there what it is. You should know that. Okay?
Here, Mark, you may be a priest, but tell me what it says, because you know better.
I'll tell you what it says in a nutshell. It says basically, actions speak louder than words. That's what it says. It says basically, walk the walk. Don't just talk the talk. Your talk is nothing. You got to walk the walk. Show me. That's what it means.